It's time for another blistering report from the front lines of the cultural war for a constitutional America. And now, here's your host, Charles Benninghoff.
Will George Soros manufacture a financial crisis by manipulating the U.S. dollar in early 2017 just to damage President Trump and the Republican Party? I think there's a very real possibility this is going to happen. In fact, the globalist currency cheater Soros has even hinted he's going to do it. That's why American patriots should speak out to Congress and demand immediate legal changes to the financial system to prevent a repeat of the 2008 financial crisis. I'll tell you how you can help to avert this crisis and in turn help with the success of the incoming Trump administration, so stay tuned. Well, first, who is George Soros? You probably heard his name before because he has an extremely notorious reputation. He's the guy that Breitbart News says gave at least $650,000 in cash to Black Lives Matter. George Soros is a billionaire, a socialist, a true globalist who avidly seeks to destroy nations and perpetuate a one-world government. And he is a world-class currency speculator. Here is Soros on a rare 60 Minutes interview from years ago back in the 90s. It's very, very informative. Listen close.
In the last 2 years, you've been blamed for financial collapse of Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, and Russia.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Just look at George Soros laugh at all the human misery he had single-handedly caused. I believe that Soros manufactured the 2008 financial crisis in America to help Barack Obama win the election that year. It's just part of his lifelong pattern. Several people have written books about this, alleging the same possibility, and one fan of mine years ago posted an article I had written for the now defunct Examiner. He posted it on YouTube as one of my first video clips ever posted there. Well, bear with me for a few moments as we take a trip down memory lane and talk about George Soros. Here's a portion of that clip that I posted back in 2009 on YouTube, which features Democrat Congressman Paul Kanjorski talking about the September 2008 financial crisis. Now listen up closely. What he's saying is very, very dramatic and very traumatic. It hurt deeply this great nation of ours.
Look, I was there when the Secretary and the Chairman of the Federal Reserve came those days and talked with members of Congress about what was going on. It was about September 15th. Here's the facts, and we don't even talk about these things. On Thursday at about 11 o'clock in the morning, the Federal Reserve noticed a tremendous drawdown of money market accounts in the United States to the tune of $550 billion was being drawn out in a matter of an hour or two. The Treasury opened up its window to help. They pumped $105 billion in the system and quickly realized that they could not stem the tide. We were having an electronic run on the banks. They decided to close the operation, close down the money accounts, and announce a guarantee of $250,000 per account so there wouldn't be further panic out there. And that's what actually happened. If they had not done that, their estimation was that by 2 o'clock that afternoon, $5.5 trillion would have been drawn out of the money market system of the United States, would have collapsed the entire economy of the United States, and within 24 hours the world economy would have collapsed. Now, we talked at that time about what would happen if that happened. It would have been the end of our economic system and our political system as we know it.
The Bush administration was blamed for that manufacturing crisis when $550 billion US dollars were yanked out of the world's money market. The Federal Reserve Chairman at the time, Ben Bernanke, actually told Congress that if they didn't pass the banker bailout prior to the election, there would be martial law on the streets of America. That's the world's greatest class of hyperbole and jive I've ever heard in my life. But it sure bought off the bankers, made them very wealthy. our entire political and economic system would have come to an end, and America would start to look like one of the Mad Max post-apocalyptic movies, is what Bernanke told the American leaders. John McCain was so impressed, he left the campaign trail to run back to Washington, D.C. to vote on the banker bailouts. That was wildly unpopular with the voters at that time and has nearly bankrupted America. And so the voters were absolutely right and the big politicians were absolutely wrong. But it did cause the Bush administration to be blamed for this phony crisis, despite having had nothing to do with it. And then it allowed Obama to steal the election from McCain. In fact, the article that I wrote was named Schooling Republicans, How Obama Stole the 2008 Election. And that article that I wrote was wiped from the internet. But this time, no one's going to wipe this material from the internet, and I'm posting it widely, and I'm putting a copy in a bank vault. They're not going to get this one down. And believe it or not, that catastrophic financial event was never investigated. Somebody took $550 billion out of our money market supply and crashed our economy, and nobody even looked into it. To this day, we don't know who manipulated the US dollar on September of 2008, but I have my suspicions, and I believe it was George Soros. The Obama administration never ordered an investigation, which is no surprise, since Soros is in Obama's pocket, and Obama's in Soros's pocket, just like he was in Clinton's pocket. And that leads me to my conclusion of why the 2008 crisis looks so close to what Soros did. Well, the reason is a 1992 event, that's 1992, known as the Black Wednesday in Great Britain. In that Black Wednesday, George Soros caused the English pound to crack. It almost bankrupted England. It made England take its pound sterling off the European exchange. It did irreparable damage. It was years and years before England recovered from what George Soros did to its economy. And you know what? Black Wednesday was a major financial catastrophe for England that I hope we don't repeat. I think it was exactly identical to the 2008 catastrophe that we had. And you know what? Even though George Soros made $1 billion by crashing the British economy in one day, I think he's going to do it again. It was an event exactly like what happened in September of 2008 here in America. Soros's fingerprints are all over the 2008 crisis. Back in 1992, John Major was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Major was the head of the United Kingdom Conservative Party. Notice the pattern? A major currency crash while a Conservative Party's in power. 2008, Bush was in power. 1992, Major was in power. And who replaced Major? Tony Blair, the ultra-liberal, took over in 1996, and he ruined England for years. And then the Conservatives came back in, and it's all better now. In fact, they've managed to lead England to Brexit, and they're just on the cusp of getting out of the European Union. George Soros harms conservative administrations, and then he lays off a country when his good friends are in office, the socialists and the globalists. If they're in office, he doesn't do anything wrong. It's really that simple. Soros did it in Great Britain in 1992, and as I said, I believe he did it in America in 2008. Plus, I believe he's working to do it again in 2017. It doesn't take much effort that we have avoided a similar manufacturing crisis during the 8 years of Obama's Open Borders administration. If there were ever a situation that would cause a currency problem, it's got to be 8 years of open borders, high unemployment, horrible deficit spending. But nothing happened because Soros causes chaos and he makes money from manufacturing. It doesn't matter who he hurts, but he never hurts his friends. He never hurts his friends. Does it pay to be a friend of Soros? I don't know. I am one person who is of the opinion that Soros is going to pay a dear price. You know, he's pumped $25 million into Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, and now because his candidate did not win, I believe there's a very real possibility that Soros will do the same thing again in 2017. This is George Soros' pattern. I see him working it. He harms the leadership of American patriots like Bush and Trump, and he tries to keep things calm if his bought and paid for friends like Obama and Clinton are in office. Aha, yes, that's a good pattern. Good for him, bad for America. And the fact of the matter is, Soros does not care if you and your family get hurt in the process. Here was Soros once again from that 60 Minutes interview in the 1990s. Listen up.
I think that I've been blamed for everything. I am basically there to make money. I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do.
Soros absolutely does not care who gets trampled underfoot as he manipulates world economies. He said that. By the way, George Soros' hedge fund, which he uses to manipulate economies, is not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission in America. He says the reason for that is so he can avoid U.S. laws to the greatest extent possible. And starting last January, Soros began issuing warnings and saying publicly that the markets are in trouble and that the financial situation reminds him of the 2008 crisis. That was another classic move by Soros. And because the American people said no to his candidate, Hillary Clinton, in a landslide election, Soros is going to be out for revenge against the United States once again. Picture what will happen if Soros makes another major move. And you know what? It will be against the dollar, and it will be specifically aimed in a way, in my humble opinion, to do the utmost damage to Trump. All sorts of unpopular bailouts could happen. Retirement accounts could be drained or vanished overnight like they did in 2008. There have even been calls to confiscate people's retirement funds or 501ks. And you know, if that happens, America is going to be in a very difficult situation. The compliant mainstream media will, of course, place all the blame squarely on Trump in an attempt to castrate his effectiveness in standing up to the globalists. I think it's coming, folks. I think it is. I can't give you any sort of financial advice, and I don't. All I can do is point out the pattern and give you the tools to speak out to Congress to try to prevent history from repeating itself. So how do we stop Soros from crashing the dollar in 2017? We have to speak out to Congress. We have to demand immediate legal changes that will prevent George Soros or any other socialist oligarch from wielding such extreme power over the US dollar and, by extension, our entire economy. We might even beat Soros by simply shining a light on his plans before he carries them out. That's a distinct possibility. That's why I hope if you see this video that you distribute it and tell your friends to watch it. It needs to go viral. Not for me. I don't profit from it. America will profit from it by shining light on Soros. Sometimes you can spook these truly evil one-worlders by exposing their plans ahead of time. It makes them back off if they know we're watching. I would hate to see George Soros crush our economy again just to hurt the Trump administration, but I know he's not above doing that. So please, go to our action page and speak out to Congress, starting with the House Financial Services Committee. They're the guys in charge of this sort of an issue. Stay tuned. Bob Mallory will have instructions for you on the next screen explaining how you can get to our action page and send your personalized messages to Congress. This is Charles Benninghoff, signing off and wishing you freedom, fulfillment, and God's many, many blessings.
Tell Congress to put the reins on the next Soros-manufactured financial crisis. If you're watching this on our action page on our website, use the form next to the video screen to select a program. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, click the icon appearing now to find a link to our action page, or check the video's description to find the link. Speak out today.